So this is my Super-Cub project. I've been at it for a little while, 6 months or so. Everything's good. Guy gave me a set of Aronca Champ 7AC wings. So I initially took the spars out of them, put aluminum spars for Piper Cub in them, to use the airfoil for a 7AC Champ. So after I got this far with the project, I started looking at the ribs to do the repairs that needed to be done on them. And over here you can see somebody's repaired these ribs. You can see where they've pop riveted them all together. And then back here you can see that it has to be modified to attach it to a Piper spar. And then beyond that, the trailing edge of the rib has to be made new to fit the Piper ailerons and flaps. So having said all that, I decided it was just as easy to make a brand new set of wing ribs with the right airfoil, which is a 35B. And then I don't have to do all the splicing, it fits the Piper spars. And since I did a video on making wooden ribs, I figured might as well do a video on making metal ribs. So follow me over here, I'll show you. This is where it all starts. You call the metal shop and you order some metal. So I got the metal. These ribs I'm using 6061 T4 because I like the way it works. It's pretty stiff material, but yet you can fold it back on itself and it won't crack. So to do that, I made a template of the rib. Essentially, this is the cutout before you form it. So what I do, I lay this on the metal, get my length, cut the sheet off, move it down, cut the sheet off again. I lay them out 5 across, and then I shear it at 9.5 inches, which is how far it is here. That gives me the rough blank. And then I take them and I stack them all on top of each other and tape them all together with Gorilla tape, sorry. And from that point, the next thing I do is I lay these dies I've made on top of the metal and I pick up these 2 pilot holes. They're actually called tooling holes, technically. And the idea of it is, here's a piece that's cut and ready to go, and it has these tooling holes. That locates it on the die, so that when it's all together, I'll show you how it goes together because I need to do this. So this goes together like this, sandwiched between 2 pieces of, you could use hard plywood, you could use, this happens to be aluminum. So that goes through, and I put a nut on it, tighten it up tight, line up the back half. If I was going to do a bunch of these, I'd be using air tools. I wouldn't do it this way, but I only have 10 more to go, so I'll take that little bit of torture. Now this is the hard part. It's actually pretty heavy when you get it all together like this. So I take it over here, put it in the vise. give the vise a good tighten. Throw on a couple clamps. And then you just start rolling material. And you see me hitting the metal this way. You don't hit it this way. You always, when you're working sheet metal, you always glance off of it and drag the metal with it to form it. And so you don't work hard in it, you just go along and you get most of it down right quick. And I like to use a block of wood, or this is a piece of forming block. Now there's little notches I've cut into the dies, and that's to help shrink it a bit. So you take the edge of your mallet and knock it into those marks. As you can see, it's not perfectly flat, down tight. The only way you can do that is to make your die angled so that for spring back. In this case, I'm going to double flange these edges so it doesn't make any difference. Let's show you the other side real quick.
So now we can see the ridges.
And you pretty much just do the same. You always try to get your flattest part done first and let the curve and work your metal this way, because I'm going to roll it this way. You work the metal this way, but you also work it this way on a curve to get rid of the excess. So you start back here on the flatter area. See how I'm glancing off the metal, bringing it toward me. I'm also bringing it that way, which is east. You don't know that, but that is the way it is. And I go back to the block. Now you can look at it and you can see that some of these went a little bit down into those notches already. Not good enough. It's got to go all the way in. So you want to take the side of your hammer, mallet, and knock them in. Use a steel body hammer right at the tip so I can work this same way I'm doing blanching clothes. So I can work the tip around the front of this better. Now, that's pretty good for doing that part of it. Let's do the second half of this. Now you think you're done? You're not. If you look down this piece, you can see how crooked it is.
Oh, wow. Okay, put it down again.
Well, that's what this tool does. You go in between all of your flutes you put in and just gently work it back. It's important to try to keep this thing as straight as you can while you're doing all this. You could go all the way to the end and then straighten it, but probably not the way I'm double flanging these. Whatever you do to the bottom, you need to do to the top to keep it straight. All this does is shrink the extra metal from doing the forming. Now if you look at it, you can see it's pretty straight now. So now you've got the outer shape of your wing rib. Now I come to this tool. This tool is a press that somebody had made for a 2412 airfoil, which is a Cessna. Won't work on a Super-Cub long airfoil, but I liked the way it was cut out and it formed the inside of the part. So I did the outside on my dies. I'm doing the inside press on their dies. Kind of a barbaric way of doing this, but until I decide to build a press with hydraulic, this is the way it's done. You can see the shape of what it presses by looking inside of it. And these things just fit down over these bolts and hold it into position. Like that. At this point, I do use air tools. You can see how it presses the center of it, reinforces the rib. Now, we come back here. Because I decided to double flange these ribs, I use these steel bars put inside the rib. I try to clamp it where the reliefs are for the bending reliefs here. Otherwise you just make extra marks in the metal. It doesn't need to be there. Same thing, you want to work the straight flat areas first. I would hurt to have one more clamp on here. See how I'm working the middle of the
But you start out with the body hammer on this one. You don't start out with the
Yeah, I don't use the
rubber
mallet.
mallet. Curved top one in. Same drill. What I'm rolling over looks a little bit rough, but most of it gets trimmed off, so in the end result, not such a big deal. Again, this is part of the reason why you keep it straight while you're working on it. Otherwise, once you roll this edge, you can't use the shrinker to straighten it. stay on too well. Sometimes where the clamps are, you have to go back, touch it up.
So you just go the full length of the metal with that bar. You don't do the part down there where you have the little piece. Oh, okay. You've got
That's what I'm doing
another
here.
block for that. Okay.
Because it doesn't even get attached. There's no screws in this part. It starts screwing from here back.
Okay.
So this just goes
Just to go
against the
ahead.
leading edge for a stiffener.
Is that a phenolic that you're using for
This
a
is a
block?
piece of phenolic, yeah.
And you're using the clamp and attaching it to the
I'm just clamping
aluminum
it to
form,
this aluminum block, the
Okay.
die block, because that's
so
what I
it's
have
nice and
here.
solid.
There's a lot of professionals out there that are probably cringing right now. But unless you've got unlimited money, sometimes you have to do it this way. So then, you have to do this. You have to draw a trim line on it.
What do? You just hold your finger a certain...
I put my fingers against the metal
Okay.
and hold the thing firm
Pen.
against my fingers.
Okay.
Just drag it along. It's easy to do once you get the hang of it. So there's it's marked out. Now, you go through and you trim it. Try to stay on the line. So now I've already got another one prepared in the next step. So we're going to move over to that one and get the idea how this is done. Let's go over and do the other part of this. This is the next step. I made this using some old scrap pieces of spars. It's nothing fancy. But you see my tooling holes here again. You see my tooling holes here again. I'm going to use those tooling holes again because it helps locate where the spars go. Without that, you're guessing at it. So this goes on here, goes on the tooling pins.
Now wait a minute, before you put that on there, you didn't say anything about Clecoing those pieces on. Okay.
Since this was already set up, I'll take one of these out and show you exactly what it is. It's just a piece of 20 thousandths material I bent up, T3. And this will make how you attach it to the spars. You just cut them. These happen to be already deburred and drilled and everything, so I slip them in here. Once they're cut to length, and you push them up against the spar flanges right here. And then you drill your holes. If you want to get really fancy, you can make a drill block that actually goes against this, and you can get every hole exactly in the place you want to get it. That's that part of it. Since I'm a one-man show here, this is how I rivet things.
So you put your bucking bar in the vise.
I put my bucking bar in the vise. Got my rivet gun. Notice I don't have a spring on it like I should have. So since this is all clecoed up now, I can take the back off of this thing. Drop the rivet in the hole. If you move your clecos to the outer holes, then it'll hold it better and you can get at it easier with the bucking bar. Fingers don't work like they used to. Now, for the sake of the video, I'm going to do these two later, but I'll show you from here on what we do. I shouldn't say we, I should say I. Because when you rivet things, it seems to suck it in a wee bit. I like to take it over here. Use something hard like the die, and just take. set it back a little bit. Makes a cleaner job out of it. So, next step, this is kind of cheating. I used my table for this. Got a hole drilled in it, I just put a bolt in.
So you have this attached to the table.
And I put this here because I'll show you the next step.
Okay.
Now, where'd we go? Oh yeah. Here's the same as you make pattern for everything else. You make a pattern for these little pieces. You put them between this die block right here. Put them in the vise. Work the edge over to come up with this. This is the tail end of the rib.
Okay.
And you see it's got a hole in it for the tool hole. Goes just like that. It locates it for you. Every rib will be exactly the same. And you just pop in 3 holes. You always put one up here that holds the extra flap. Clean everything up, cover it.
You're just using a drill bit to do
I just
that?
use a drill bit. It's better to do it with something different, but that's good enough. Stick a cleco in here. Actually, it's easier to take this cleco and put it in from the other side. You're not fighting the cleco. Good idea to have 2 air hoses hooked up at the same time. You don't have to change hoses all the time. Sometimes you have to play with bucking bars to get one that'll actually work. There we go. Now, when I did this before, actually wood works better because it burns. There's that piece.
Flip it
So,
over. Flip it over. There you go.
so this is a rib. Now it needs to be cleaned, deburred, etched, iodined, and primed. And this is what you wind up with.
And now the advantage to rolling the edge over.
The advantage to doing this double roll is so that you can stitch the wing instead of riveting or pop rivets or screws.
But you can still pop rivet or screw if you want to?
You can.
Okay.
The thing is, normal pressed ribs like this don't have that extra roll on this side. So if you stitched it, it cuts the string that you're stitching it with eventually. Not right away, but it'll do it in flight. So those kind of ribs, either they drill a hole every 3 or 4 inches and screw it with little teeny screws, or they put pop rivets in it. Pop rivets are a real pain to get back out when you recover the airplane. Screws, the dope gets in the slots and it hardens and it's hard to get the screws out later. So with this double rolled flange, it can be stitched and all you do is take a razor blade and cut it and you put new fabric on it.
Is there less damage or less wear to the rib that way too then?
Less wear to the rib, there's no flex this way. The fabric doesn't flex like this on top of the rib. And this is a really strong rib. A lot stronger than the other kind. Anyway, that's making metal ribs.
That's the way John Norman makes metal ribs.
That's the way J&E does it, yes.